Okay. It's once again that time of the year where I have to go through traumatizing experiences to explain why people in my comments are talking about traumatizing shit. Because you'll see in my comments, people are being assholes, as always. And when questioned, they'll say that, well, this woman is a murderer and she deserves it. People need to know she got away with murder. Didn't you know? Weren't you aware? I didn't. But this is something that I go through every couple of years because a group of YouTubers told thousands of people. Hi, Scott. Potato was good. Anyways, a group on YouTube told their followers that I murdered somebody. And now, every once in a while, people will come attacking me and trying to convince everybody that's looking at my videos currently that I actually did this and I deserve eternal torment and eternal torture. And it's very frustrating. And frustrating isn't the word. It's what I have been going through as a result of these channels falsely accusing me of murder in 2020 is far beyond frustrating, but my vocabulary fails me to find a better word. So we're gonna go all the way back so y'all can understand the full story, right? But I'm also going to try to do it very quickly because it's a lot, and I've gone through it multiple times here in the past 10 years that I've been on YouTube. Y'all like my lights, by the way? Yes, there was a different... I'm redecorating. The other one is still around. I'm thinking of adding to it. Anyways. I was born to abusive family. My mother and father were drug addicts. They sold drugs. My father went to jail for a while. Prison, actually. My mom was a heavy alcoholic. I was born in a car, and my mom wasn't planning to tell anybody she was in labor. She had just taken some drugs to numb what she thought was pain from a beating the night before, because she was being beaten so regularly that was a thing. She was pregnant, but when her back started hurting, her first thought was, Ronnie must have beat me too hard last night, and not, oh, I'm in labor. So I was born in a car, and my grandmother immediately took me because my mother was not fit to take care of me. And I would go back and forth from my grandparents to my parents, where at my parents' house I was severely neglected. Because my grandmother took care of me, my parents decided that they didn't need to, so they wouldn't buy me clothes, they wouldn't wash my clothes, they wouldn't take care of me. So I would go to school 5 days a week. Well, I would go to school on Monday, okay, but by Wednesday I was stinking, I was dirty, and I couldn't do these things myself. If my grandparents would buy me nice clothes, but if I brought them home, my sisters would take them, and my parents wouldn't do anything because it was a situation where my sisters felt like I was being spoiled and getting things they weren't getting. So if my grandparents let me bring things home, it was a communal, my sisters would just take it. Anything that I had that they wanted, they would just take from me. This was my entire childhood. I had head lice for 18 years. I had head lice until I shaved my head after I graduated high school and had my own free will to shave my head. And that was a situation my grandmother didn't even handle. Like, my grandmother loved me, but my grandmother was also abusive in her own way, and it was very important to her that I look a specific way. And so it didn't matter to her that I had head lice as long as my hair was beautiful. And she would take me and get pictures taken of me where I was wearing these beautiful dresses and had my hair fixed up, and I was miserable. I was always very pale and weak because I was always iron deficient. I was sick. It was bad. My childhood was bad. My brother was handicapped completely by my father. It was a bad life. And I got out of that and I got married. As soon as I graduated high school, I married the first guy that showed interest in me, who turned out to be not actually interested in me. That was also a very confusing situation because my ex-husband is now a woman, and they were transitioning and trying to find themselves in the period that they married me. They married me so that people would kind of get off of their back about, because if you're a man and you're married to a woman, you're straight. There's no more questions. There's no more, you don't have to argue or fight or prove anything anymore. You've done it. You have a woman on your arm. Congratulations, you're straight, right? And so I was kind of a casualty of that confusion from their end. So I was very used and hurt. And at some point I just gave up on it, and I left them, and I went to live with my grandmother. And at that point, everybody in my life was very fixated on me finding another man. I was getting older. I was already fat. I was 300 pounds by the time I graduated high school. I've always had an eating disorder. It used to be that I ate too much to comfort for everything else. So I was not in a good place mentally. I had been diagnosed as schizoaffective, and I had been diagnosed with PTSD, and I had been in and out of mental hospitals, being Baker-acted for self-harm and for having breakdowns where I would run away. I was a runaway. I was a manic runaway. When I would have manic episodes, I would just pack a bag and a bear and run out and go off to explore the world, and wind up someplace stupid with no money and no friends and no idea of what to do other than to start heading back to my grandmother's. So I posted an ad on Craigslist explaining that I have mental health issues, but I'm looking for a man. I'm not looking for a one-night stand or anything that's going to be like passing. I was looking for a relationship. I had just gotten out of a marriage, and I'm looking for another marriage. I'm looking for somebody that can take care of me. The man that responded was a catfish. He lied. Everything he told me was a lie. His age, his name, his work, everything that he told me was a lie. And he led me on in a relationship for a while. He even moved me into his house for a little while to prove to me that he was single and he had this house and all of these things that were his. And it was all a lie. It was all just to get me into his life. So eventually I moved in, and another woman was living there. And it turned out that he had a fiance. Her name was Roberta Laws. And he decided he wasn't going to let me go back to my grandmother's, because I told him that I wanted to go back to my grandmother's multiple times. I tried to leave. I had a vehicle, but before he moved, when he moved me into his house, he had me leave my vehicle at my grandmother's so that he was the only one that had transportation after I was in the house. He also took my cell phone so I couldn't call my grandmother and just have somebody come and pick me up. And eventually, he killed her and he buried her in the backyard. And my mind broke. I remember him showing me the dead body and going blank. And I can remember like him physically moving me around, but I wasn't actually doing anything myself. I was just kind of a hollow shell being moved from one area to another until he set me down on the couch. And apparently days passed in my memory where everything is getting foggy. And eventually, I was able to get my senses about me. And I was able to get away from him. And I first went to a gas station in the middle of the night because I was terrified that he was following me, that he had friends that were going to find me. And so I told the gas station people that I was escaping from an abusive situation and I was trying to get to a friend who lived in St. Augustine. So after the lady got off work, she drove me to my friend's job and I told my friend what had happened and she said she called the police and she brought me a phone to call the police. And I contacted the police and I told them everything. I gave them everything. I gave them my laptop, he had my phone, but they got that. I gave them my fingerprints, my DNA, the whole thing. Like when I initially turned him in, they didn't believe me. Like it was because I am diagnosed schizophrenic, and when a schizophrenic comes in and says that they're reporting a murder, the police take it with a grain of salt. And so they asked me to call and have him talk about it over a recorded line. And when I did, and he confessed, the atmosphere completely changed. And they hung up, and the police said, "Can you do that again? We didn't put tape in the recorder." They either hadn't put enough in or they hadn't put any in at all because they didn't think that I was telling the truth. And so we went through the whole trial ordeal. Like, he was picked up that day. They put me in a women's shelter. Scott and his wife were having lunch, and he's telling me about it. They put me in a women's shelter for a little while because my grandmother was in the hospital when I escaped. Thankfully, because after I went to the police, Kenneth woke up, and the first thing he did was he went to my grandmother's condo, and if she had been home, he would have killed her. But she was in the hospital and protected, so he wasn't. The police were following him at that moment too, because I'd already contacted the police, and they were already following him all day. Investigation, trial, I worked with them the entire way. I was never arrested. Ever. There was never a question of my innocence. I was completely upfront with them about everything. I gave them all of my access to my email accounts, to everything that I had. They never even had to get a warrant. I never had to get a lawyer. I openly told them everything to help them to get justice for this woman. When it went to trial, they wanted the death penalty. And the jury went out, and the jury came back for the death penalty. But after the jury went out, Kenneth approached the judge, and he confessed to the murder. He had already confessed to detectives multiple times, but there's still, the trial. And so he wanted to change his change his plead guilty, and just straight up confess and tell the judge everything. So when the jury came back, the judge said that because of that confession, he was going to give him life and spare him the death penalty, even though the jury wanted the death penalty. Now, this upset some people because Angela Corey, the representative at the time, wanted Kenneth McBride to get the death penalty. And so she filed an argument against this because she thought that the people of Florida had been denied a proper death sentence because this man was that terrible of a human. He had been a sexual predator, which is why he had to lie to me about his identity when he met me. He had been living off of Roberta for 12 years. She was on disability, and that's what was paying all of their bills. He was not a good person. He was a bad man out there doing bad things. And I got caught up in it because I was mentally unwell and weak, and he pulled me in. And once I was pulled in, I couldn't escape without putting myself in more danger. It's a very, very complicated situation to be in. And I did what I had to do to keep myself alive. And a lot of people see that as me participating and wanting bad things to have happened. But it was just me keeping myself alive after something bad happened. So I was never charged. He got life in prison. I lived with my grandmother up until she passed away in 2015. Now, my grandmother had a will, and her will left me everything. There was a property out in Ocean Way, there was a condo, there was a vehicle, and there was multiple bank accounts. And there was also a safe in her bedroom that had all the jewelry in it. The safe was supposed to be dispersed amongst the children, but the bank accounts were mine. One of them was specifically to bury her for, but my grandmother left me taken care of because she was aware that I wasn't able to take care of myself and that she was all I had. And so when she passed away, I was supposed to be okay. But my Aunt Kathy had other ideas, and so I sat there in the condo for a year just waiting for my family to do the right thing, to have a will reading, and the will reading never happened. And then eviction papers came, and I had to leave the condo, and I had to just walk away from everything that I have ever owned. I had to walk away from my piano, from all of my clothes, my bed, my toys, every picture that was ever taken of me. Everything of mine, everything of my grandmother's, everything of my grandfather's. All because my family didn't want to read the will and properly disperse everything. They wanted to just take everything and leave me homeless, which is what they did. So I became homeless, and I traveled to California, and I spent 5 years in California homeless, working with the mental health programs to get back on my feet. When I got housing in 2020, well, I published a book in 2019, and then I got housing in 2020. My family is angry that I'm not homeless anymore. They're angry that I am moving up. And my Aunt Kathy doesn't want people looking into the will situation. She doesn't want people finding out what they did to me. So when I got housing, she contacted these channels on YouTube that specialize in targeting mentally ill YouTubers. And she told them a lot of things about me that were not true. She told them that I was a murderer, that I had just gotten away with it, that I had murdered Roberta, I had murdered my grandmother, I had everybody I've ever encountered in my life that died, it was because of me, right? I'm a horrible curse on the universe, and I should not be on YouTube, and I should be silenced completely. Nobody should be listening to me. Nobody should be having to see my face ever again. And so she sent these channels after me with the idea that I've murdered somebody and gotten away with it. And even though that should be very, very clear and easy to prove, because you can Google Roberta Laws and find out everything that I just told you. You can Google Kenneth Ray McBride and find out everything I just told you. What you're very rarely going to find when you Google this murder is my name, because I wasn't charged. I was a witness. In Adonis Paul, Original Owl, Daywave Radio, there's a bunch of channels involved in this for the last 6 years that refuse to back down. They keep saying they proved I committed this murder, but I was never charged. They've never had me indicted. The police never contacted me about this. They've never brought forward anything new to the case other than, well, but your family says. Yes, my family is abusive and they are trying to silence me about the abuse. What they are saying is lies because they're abusive and they don't want people to believe me about their abuse. It should be clear by this point. But for some reason it's not, because there are some people online who love conspiracy theories. And it's a nightmare for me because my life is not a conspiracy theory. I've lived it. I know what's true. But it's impossible to prove to a conspiracy theorist what you know is true. Even if you know it's true, I've shown them the facts, the news articles, the court documents. Original Owl paid hundreds of dollars for court transcripts, and every one of them labeled me witness. They're wasting their money and their time trying to prove something because somebody lied to them. And they believed it enough to talk about it, and they can't back down. Like, if these channels would just back down and acknowledge they were wrong, they were misled by my family who they thought they could trust, because normally if somebody comes forward and says, I'm family and I have information about this person, you can believe them, you can trust them, because they're, usually your family does know you. My family doesn't know me because my family is abusive. They've never known me, and then I went no contact with them. So the me that I am now, my family has never met. The me that I am today is after 10 years of being no contact with my people and being in therapy and being medicated. You don't know me. Nothing they say about me is going to be accurate, even if they were trying to tell the truth. Okay, Scott, I'm going to stop and I'll start talking to you now. It just goes on and on, right? It goes on and on and on, year after year. I have to go through these memories that were already traumatizing to me because these people are using my past trauma and twisting it for their current drama. And it's just re-traumatizing me again and again and again because YouTube won't do anything about the targeted harassment that is rampant on their platform. I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to let y'all go and have a conversation with Scott so he'll calm down.